How do you do, G-Pod crew? It's your Naughty Buddy Puddy here, and today we're reviewing Morbius, the Living Vampire. Or just Morbius. This is going to be a spoiler-free review of the movie, and then of course I will go into my breakdown, which honestly I feel is very short. But we do definitely need to go into that. So before we get started on this, make sure you hit the like button, make sure the subscribe button. We will be talking about the Morbius character, or the Morbius movie, based off the Morbius character that Sony owns the rights to, which is a Marvel character, but Sony owns the rights because of Spider-Man. Which, when I get to the spoiler section of this review, or the full breakdown, I should say, I will be getting into those details as well as talking about some stuff that may be viable and important for down the road as well. Now, as far as my review, I have a lot I want to say, because in a short way, I should say. So here's the thing. I want to go ahead and give some appreciation to the creator of Morbius being more accurate to the comic book origins of Morbius, down to certain parts of the movie that may not even need to be needed, but they were put in there. So bravo for that. But the problem I have with Morbius in general is honestly how mediocre it is. I'm hearing a lot of people say it's better than Venom. It's better than Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And here's my thing. I understand why they're saying that, because Venom in general was a mess, especially when we don't have Spiderman involved. And Morbius's origin story doesn't need Spider-Man, but 90% of the people that know Morbius know him because of Spider-Man. So it's kind of a conflicting situation, because his origins did end up working out nicely, but then they changed things later on when it comes to his origins that kind of blend or blur the lines between a lot of the characters. But here's the thing. I'm hearing a lot of people say it's better than Venom, it's better than Venom. And honestly, I felt this was more mediocre than Venom. Even though Venom had its hiccups, there was at least the comedy that was involved. Morbius just seems kind of stale to me. It was boring. Honestly, I was going to give it 1 point lower than the score I'm actually about to give it, but I gave it an extra score for being at least more decent to the origin story, unlike Venom. At least I can say this origin story is way more accurate than the Venom origin story. So I kind of just want to get through this review and state that the actors themselves did a great job. Jared Leto definitely did a better job as Michael Morbius than he ever did as the Joker. I will state that as a fact. He fits the persona of Morbius, so acting-wise and quality-wise, that's another reason why the score I gave it. But it's still a pretty low score. Actually, for me, it's a pretty low score. So I just want to go ahead and get to it and say the acting is phenomenal. The plot line is okay, but the story drags on to me where it's not as enjoyable. They're just trying to explain Morbius, and I feel like it's one of those things like they need this for future movies, but then the future movies I'm figuring out don't feel as enlightened. Understand, Morbius is supposed to be an anti-hero just like Venom, where he doesn't want to do the things that he does. And this isn't spoilers, this is just well known when it comes to Morbius. And if it's not, well, then my apologies. But my point to the whole thing is I, again, feel this was a mediocre movie. So in my final verdict, and I actually gave it a point higher than I was planning on doing, and that's based on because I looked at other reviews and said, okay, I agree with something. But still, low score for me. I'm giving Morbius a 5 out of 10. It's mediocre. With Sonic coming out, with No Way Home already out, with so many other options when it comes to movies, honestly, Morbius is a downfall. That has nothing to do with the actors. That has nothing to do with the origin story. It just feels dry. And I have a lot of reasons that I will be going into when it comes to the spoiler part. But with that being said, I want to go ahead and get into the spoiler part. And so, again, a 5 out of 10. I do appreciate what they've done, but it definitely is not on Marvel standards, it's definitely not good, or at least in my eyes. And with that being said, I also want to issue a spoiler alert. I'm about to go into a full breakdown of the movie. If you have questions about certain characters or what happened with certain parts of the movie, especially with like maybe mid-credits, things of that nature, then I will be going into that information here. But your spoiler warning has been said. Let us continue. Now that we've gotten the spoiler out of the way, I do want to talk about Morbius' origins as well as his first appearances, which is actually two different things. So let's talk about his origins. First and foremost, his origins are accurate. He actually did do some research on a boat with Martine Bancroft, and he did jump off the boat because of his outburst. But the whole Nobel Prize thing is a little bit shifted and different. So let me explain. Now, in the books, Emil Nikos was his college associate that both were looking to fix his blood problem that you see in the movie. Emilio Nikos does end up becoming a vampire. What ends up happening is Morbius, his blood gets tainted with the vampire blood. He ends up becoming Morbius, the living vampire, and ends up biting Nikos. And Nikos ends up becoming his own vampire. But this is where things go a little crazy. They combined two different characters. The character of Lucius Crown was actually a Hydra agent that ended up getting bitten by a vampire, or by Morbius, just say, and he became his own vampire as well. You're going to start to see a connection with a lot of vampires connected to Morbius, because Morbius will bite bad guys because he always wants to fight his urge to never ever bite any innocent people. But then what happens is he'll end up getting into lethal battles with bad guys and bite them, and some of them become vampires. Crazy, I know. But going back to the story of his origins, this is where they basically took Nikos and Lucius and combined it as one character. See, in the comic books, Lucius actually becomes a character named Hunger. Well, there's actually two types of Hungers in the Marvel Universe, but this is the vampire version of Hunger. And he becomes pretty ruthless in the story. And these vampires also get hunted by, you guessed it, Blade, which brings Blade into the fold. But why would Spider-Man be involved with this? Well, this goes back to not the origin story of Morbius, but the first appearance of Morbius. You see, in the first appearance of Morbius, in Amazing Spider-Man number 101, the Spider-Man ends up encountering Morbius because Morbius ends up fighting his hunger, and in return, the news is spreading about Morbius and his blood and so on and so forth. That what happens is Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, he's mutated to now have an additional 4 limbs, 6 arms altogether. And you've actually seen this probably in the animated series if you're a fan of Spider-Man, and that's probably where you were introduced to Morbius. Now, what's different from the comic book and the cartoon was the Lizard, Dr. Connors, was involved, and both Spider-Man and the Lizard wanted to take down Morbius, not to kill him, but to get his blood, thinking it would fix them. Well, of course, Spider-Man ends up curing himself, but the Lizard kind of doesn't. And this is where Spider-Man gets involved. And there's even later comics where Spider-Man and Blade team up to go after Morbius and other vampires because he's being blamed for what other vampires are doing. Again, when it comes to the Marvel world, things get convoluted. But it really helps to know that because of Morbius being a good vampire, he's kind of like Blade in that sense, where they're both have vampire blood in them, but they suppress their hungers for the good of mankind. And then we have other vampires like Hunger that are not good for mankind, where Blade ends up hunting them. But of course, Blade did end up hunting Morbius at one point, which brought Spider-Man into the fold. Now, outside of Morbius' first appearance in the comic books, there is another identifiable thing that you guys are probably here to talk about, and that is the whole mid-credit scene, or 2 mid-credit scenes. Okay, they did really weird on this, where we ended up getting 2 mid-credit scenes and no end credit screen. It was just probably the most weirdest mid-credit setup ever, not to mention who's involved with it. So Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, ends up appearing from another multiverse into Morbius's verse, which I guess has their own Spider-Man, and He's now in jail, but because he didn't do anything in this world, he's set free, and then he faces up against Morbius to set up a team. This is where I'm conflicted. First and foremost, if they're setting up the Sinister Six, the only time Morbius was involved in the Sinister Six was the Sinister 66 in the comic books. This has nothing to do with Morbius himself when it was more of like a hologram situation. Second of all, Morbius is trying to be a good guy. Why set it up for him to be a bad guy and go after Spider-Man? This is conflicting storylines that just don't make sense to me. And honestly, it's a reason why I gave this movie such a low score. You're trying to combine so many things to make something lucrative that I just don't have any interest in. I love Sinister Six. I love the idea. No Way Home kind of did their Sinister 5 instead of Sinister 6 and did a phenomenal job with it. But this Adrian Toomes, a.k.a. Vulture, teaming up with Morbius, that might be fighting maybe another Spider-Man, because we clearly see now that this has nothing to do with No Way Home. And if you notice, the appearance of Adrian Toomes, a.k.a. Vulture, is not the same one that was in the trailer. It's a very different one where he's wearing the full Vulture outfit, and we don't even see Michael Keaton's face, so it could have been totally a voiceover with either CGI or a guy in someone else wearing the outfit. It just felt out of place. There's a major reason why I gave this a 5 out of 10. I was happy to see that some of the origin stories of Morbius were intact. The actors themselves, I had no problem with them. I was very happy with their performances. But this is the reason why this movie is lacking, because it just feels like it was going somewhere else. They tried to backtrack to fit in with No Way Home, and now because of No Way Home, they felt like they needed to do something different. And now I'm not invested. I'm always invested in Spider-Man. The Venom series, I'm trying to be invested in, but I'm more invested in those, honestly, more than Morbius. This is a convoluted story, and these are just broken down, crazy, I don't know what to call this. It's really bizarre what they're doing here, and there's so many open stories they can do in Morbius to where they could leave it open with more vampires, because you got to think, with Lucius Crown taking the thing, there were 2 there, which means we have other opportunities for other vampires. And if you noticed, Martine Bancroft also got bitten, or her tongue did, and now she's a vampire. This brings us into Martine Bancroft. She actually does end up becoming a vampire, but very different reasons. See, she becomes a vampire through a cult that is a cult of real vampires, not vampires made by sinking their blood to vampire things, like literally vampires connected to like Dracula. And so in return, you see her become something that it was good because she wanted to be into Michael Morbius's life, but then becomes evil, as you see in this comic book right here. The true vampire storyline, we're not going to get no more unless she's considered a true vampire because of being bitten, while the other 2 vampires, Hunger and of course Morbius himself, were created because of the blood transfusion and the genetic research through vampires. So maybe she is now the true vampire, but like, where are we going with this? Like, I understand when it comes to the Marvel Comics and Marvel movie universe that they have to change things in order to fit the scenario, but I'm not invested in this. And for people out there that say they may be invested in this, this is like, again, this is just kind of like what they did with like Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Like, I feel like they're just shoehorning so many things. And honestly, I really wish that Sony would just sell off the Spider-Man universes to Marvel, or at least sell off the other characters, Venom and all them. I feel like the MCU would be much better at making these characters more prominent in storylines. And again, introduce Morbius through Spider-Man. Why you gotta do this whole separate thing like Venom? What is going on, Sony? With that being said, I'm pretty much done. I was really excited to see this, just to see another incarnation. And with everyone online saying it's better than Venom, I'm a little bit conflicted on that because neither one of the movies are that good. But when you're comparing to something like Spider-Man No Way Home, you're looking at gourmet dinner to peanuts on a plane. This is just stupid. And I can't wait for the new Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movie. I can't wait for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness because without a doubt, both of those movies are going to be way better than Morbius ended up being. And so, with that being said, thank you for watching my review and my full breakdown of the simple things in there. I actually feel that full breakdown was very short. It wasn't much information. I feel like I had to do more filler on this review and full breakdown than I've ever had to do before. But tell me in the comments, did you like Morbius? Did you think the story was interesting? Do you feel Sony is doing a good job with Spider-Man's characters? Or do you feel they need to go ahead and relinquish it to MCU, aka Disney? I can't wait to hear your comments in below. And as always, I am Putty with the G-Plot crew, and you know what we do. We do reviews like this. I'll see you guys in a week from now for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Peace.